Hello, this is Mark Tucker.
And I'm Alan Furstenberg, and welcome to Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs.
How was your Thanksgiving, Mark?
It was a good Thanksgiving, just small, just the five of us, and but it was good. There was this point during the day where we were all kind of just buzzing around the kitchen doing different things. My oldest son made the apple pie this year instead of me. I focused on the turkey, and we had people doing yams and yam casserole and gravy and all kinds of homemade rolls. So
Oh,
it was
always.
it was fun. It was kind of a little chaotic, but it was the first year where everybody was like pitching in at the same time. So it was fun. How about
That was
yours?
great. No, mine was nice and quiet with just a couple of family members, and then some Zoom chats with other friends and family. And it was nice and relaxing. Overall, a nice relaxing day. And Thanksgiving's a very introspective time for me. So I was thinking a lot about friends and family
Right.
and people that I've been come in contact with over the year, kind of based on our last episode in some ways.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's we also had a Zoom call with the family that we typically have had Thanksgiving with. It's they live across the valley, so it's about an hour drive. The Valley of the Sun, Arizona. Sorry, Phoenix. Um, and but we had a nice Zoom call with their young girls, and it was just fun and chaotic there too. Just seeing them all, trying to fight over the screen time and what to say. But it just really warmed my heart. I know it wasn't the same as being together, but it was definitely good to be able to spend some time with them.
Yeah, no, it's always good to be able to reach out to people that you've got that connection with, and to keep those connections alive. That's always good. So I was thinking about what we could talk about this week, and two things kind of came up. One was that in our voice lunch on Friday last week, Andrew, who's a regular at Voice Lunch,
Shout out to Andrew.
shout out to Andrew, commented that he'd been watching the show, and based on some of what we've been talking about recently, he decided to start moving some of his content to a content management system for his voice actions. And then you also recently published the next part in your series about voice spies, number spies,
Yep.
talking about how you were using CMS. So I thought maybe this is a good time for us to chat about, what's a CMS in the voice world, and what are the different ways we can use it.
Yeah, so CMS, content management system, is where you put your stuff that you're going to use, your assets and your text content. Typically, it's been for the web world, and then also now for mobile. And there are dedicated content management systems, things like WordPress. But there's also this new generation of content management systems called Headless CMSs. And the idea with Headless is that there is no head. The head being the web page, I guess that's the way I look at it.
Hence the name, I guess.
I guess I always think of like Ichabod Crane and.
I was going to say I live very close to Sleepy Hollow, so
Oh,
the
yeah.
legend of the Headless Horseman is very, very common around here in October.
So the headless content management system being that you can put content in, but where you're going to consume that content or where it's going to be could be a web app, it could be a mobile app, and it also could be a voice app. Now, I don't know that a lot of content management system vendors have really caught on to this yet, but there is going to be a need for CMSs that are for voice. But
oh, definitely. I think one of the great explanations you have in your article is right up front about why you want to do this. Is changes to your content can happen without needing to recompile the content in code. It's your second sentence there, and I think it really nails it about why you want to use it in the first place.
Yeah, so if you put your content inside your code and a developer has to be involved in changing that, and you also then have to republish your code, that is a cost. So developer dollars are more expensive than content author dollars would be in their time, and plus you just have to then slot it into their backlog of things that they have to do, and there could be a 2-week turnaround depending on if you're following a certain methodology or something. So there are lots of reasons why you'd want to externalize that content.
You know, I think one of, and in terms of cost, it's not just a cost in terms of monetary cost, it's also
Mhm.
time cost.
Yep.
You know, making sure that you've got a smooth pipeline to create new content, with people who are specialized in creating the content or in tweaking the content. One of the things that, you know, is always major to me that I always think about is when I'm building something, if I have a typo in what's being displayed,
Yeah.
or, you know, how much time does that take to correct? And sometimes if you do it wrong, it takes a long time to correct.
Yes.
And that can be a problem for some people. And it's worse in the voice world where these days you know, Google or Amazon could go change something in how the text to speech engine works, or how the SSML engine works, or
Yep.
little tweaks that have suddenly made the your carefully crafted script just
Yes.
sound weird. There are lots of times where I've, you know, suddenly been using my own action, and it suddenly comes out at me in this high-pitched squeaky voice, and I'm like,
Wait.
that
Yeah.
was not the voice I thought it was using. um, and needing to go back in and tweak those things, and being able to tweak just the content, just the text, just the audio
Right.
needs to be far easier than recoding all of your logic.
Yeah. And so for this project for Number Spies, I picked a content management system called sanity.io. Just I hadn't been, you know, I used a CMS. I'd done that a few years ago for a specific project. Thought it was a good choice to use the particular product that I chose, Graph CMS. But I went looking for other ones just to kind of see what was out there. And one of the things about Sanity is that it's got some benefits that you can just do some simple configuration files to define what your types are. And then every content management systems needs some sort of a admin or an author website, so you can go in and you can change your content. And so there is a sample project that would generate a whole website based off of these configuration files for the different types that you have. So like in Number Spies, there's a transmission, and there's trips, and there's missions, and there's all kinds of things that happen inside of the game. And so I just model those types, and then it generates a web admin UI for me, so that I can add my content outside of my voice app, and then it gets published to some data store. And then inside my voice app, I make an API call to retrieve, basically do a query against the different types in my database to pull back the information I need.
Now, this is actually one of the things I really like the most about what you were describing, is the fact that you are creating these types. And I know if we were thinking about them in terms of a web CMS, they would be things like component boxes or pages, or different
Yep.
elements on a screen. And yet here it is in a nice generic form, so that we can say, here's a generic thing, and we'll figure out how to present it, but here's the structure that we need to store it in, and
Yep.
the structure that we need to manage it.
Yeah, and what's nice about some of these systems and Sanity's in particular is that there is a query language that it's not GraphQL, but it's kind of along those lines, where you specify this is the type that I want, and you can do some filtering, and you can also say only return back these properties off of this object, and you get back this JSON object, which is very easy to consume in a Node.js app. And so that's really nice about that the fact that it's there's an API. The API is simple to use, and the content is easy to consume. So that's something I really liked about Sanity.
Now, you just use this for, I would say, non-conversational content, right?
Yeah. So is there a distinction? There may or may not be, but there's content where I see content as this is what comes back, the text to speech that comes back. And then I also see, in this case, game content, things like defining missions and secret encoded messages and things like that are in the system. Now, you can go, I think, all in and have all that stuff in the database. But in this case, in this particular case, partly because I had already, for expediency, I'd already just started off with doing the standard way, which the text-to-speech content is in a JSON file baked inside of your code, and I just kept it there.
Well,
It's
no, it makes sense. And I think part of what is, important when we're thinking about designing how we're storing this data is thinking, where are we getting the data from? One of the things we like talking about a lot is how content is queen, about how,
yeah,
and knowing where that content is coming from and where it's storing. So having that, some of that content in a CMS makes a lot of sense. Having it in some other database may make sense for your design. And I
right.
think it's important to say, it really is important based on what your design needs to be.
Yeah, so I've had projects where everything has been in this single JSON file, all my text strings that are going to be for text to speech, and the advantage of that is that I can take that and I could go send it off to a translator, and it could, one file gets translated for other languages, and we're good to go. So I've done projects where I've just done that. I've also done projects where I've done none of the text to speech inside of the project, and that's all been in this external content management system. And so I've done the extreme the other way, and this one's kind of a hybrid where some of the stuff that's kind of like the decoration around the content as far as what you're going to say, kind of the main structure of the conversation is still in that JSON file. I don't see that changing very often, but then the game components are. You're going to add new missions, and you're going to have new messages and things like that. So that part then is the part, just think about what you think is going to change over time, and then consider putting that in the content management system first.
One of the things that I've done a lot of and this is actually what sparked my multivocal library, was this notion of having both a core set of stuff that is going to be baked in and compiled in, but also needing on occasion to say, oh, that no longer sounds right. I'm going to need to tweak that. Or I need to add additional phrases, or I want to add additional phrases because it's, a holiday season. I'd like some additional phrases during the holidays only.
Yeah.
So a lot of what multivocal lets me do is have it in both places. So I have, my responses both baked in as kind of a default, but also I've got hooks in so that if I want to add more phrases or change the phrases, I can do that using a database of some sort. Either, mostly I tend to use a Firebase real-time database, and for various efficiency purposes. But being able to do that, I think it's why we tend to start looking at CMSs, because we realize, baking everything in makes a lot of sense up until it doesn't, and then and then you suddenly need a way to do, to do something else.
So are you talking about, like, on multivocal, then this stuff that's stored externally would be overrides to the things that are baked in?
Yeah, one of the principles that multivocal allows for is, one of the core concepts is that everything is configuration. So all of your text responses are part of the configuration.
Okay.
And then it says, and your configuration can come from anywhere. And in fact, it can come from multiple anywheres.
Okay.
And different parts of your configuration can be defined in multiple anywheres. So I define multiple configuration files for my text responses. So I usually break it up into different components, and one component will all be in one file, and another component will be in another file. And then I'll say, and all of that can, of course, be overridden by any settings that I put into Firebase, so that I can, I can go and override what text sentences I'm using back, or even, for example, one of the other notions that multivocal allows for is to say, okay, after the user has hit this phrase 5 times, let's go to a shorter phrase. Let's use different things when they're repeats. Now that threshold, I could say it's at 5, and then over time I could say, you know what, maybe that really should be 7.
Yeah.
So I can just tweak the configuration to bump it up to 7.
No, that's really interesting. I like that the text evolves with the experience of the user. I've got some things that are more baked in. It sounds like yours is more configuration, but if this is the first time somebody uses this, or I could count the number of times that they've called this specific intent, and after a certain time, then it just switches to a shorter mode. Or it could even be, well, if they haven't used it, if they've used it over 4 times this intent, and the last time that they used it has been within the last
month
2 months or a month or whatever, then you can do the shorter, and then if not, then you can flip back to the longer one. So I definitely like that that personalization feature. But yeah, I think there's a lot of that is still left to happen. One of the advantages of content management system for video or for like image assets is that you can upload one image file, and then you can query and have it come back in different sizes. You can have it auto cropped to a square, or to whatever it is that you want. Something that I see a need for is that same type of thing for audio content. Be able to upload one audio file, but then format it for different speakers to get the best quality that you can for each of the different speakers, or different things like that. I don't know exactly how that would have to differ, and if the processing is so much longer for audio that it would make it hard to do that. But it'd be nice to be able to have those types of features.
It makes sense. And even if the audio process, that means that the CMS should be able to load and manage, the 2 or 3 versions that it needs, and just know how to distribute them at the correct delivery time, or be able to deliver, be able to upload a very large audio and be able to say, and I just want these 5 seconds of it, and have it manage that. So those are very useful things I can see a CMS doing. I can also see the CMS, one of the things when you were talking about the types, and when I was reading about the types, is being able to have attributes there to say things like, this response applies to this intent, or this intent and these other criteria, these other conditions. And then to make a query just with all that information, and have it pick the appropriate response or responses, or just pick one appropriate response.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Yeah, I think there's this topic of CMSs is just going to get even bigger as more and more developers in the voice world catch on that there's a need for it. I know there's a number of different companies that are trying to tackle this problem, and it's just fun being part of the conversation, and trying to understand it, and from the perspective of the projects that I work on.
No, I agree. And I think one of the things I hope people get out of it is that a CMS is great, external storage is great, fine, but overall it's really finding the right tool that works for your needs. But overall, baking stuff in is probably not the best way to do it. I think
that's the shorter term. So I think you start as you start doing spending more hours doing this, you start realizing this isn't something that I want to keep doing. I want to do something different here.
I think one of the lessons that I think we learned over in the web world, and then we relearned it in mobile, and now we're relearning it again in voice, is that separation of logic and content really is important. It really makes for better systems. I think we still need to learn how to do that. We're just barely figured it out on the website. I don't think we've gotten it yet on the mobile side. But we need to figure it out in voice. And I think CMSs or their descendants, whatever those might be, are going to be part of that.
Yeah, I would agree. Well, we'd love to hear if you're using a content management system, or if you have CMS questions as it applies to voice. As always, we're here to help out.
And if you've got great suggestions about CMSs that you're using, or best methods, we'd love to hear it as well and share.
Exactly. So thank you. This has been a great episode talking about content management systems.
Always a fun topic.
Well, you take care. We're Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs. Take care, everyone.